And he would say, and I quote, "There is no need to look for God here or there. He is no farther away than the door of your own heart. There he stands waiting till he finds you ready to open the door and let him enter. No need for you to call him from afar. He is waiting more impatiently than you for that door to be open." Many times, the way he wrote, or the things he said in his sermons, they're very, very similar to what other mystics from other religions were saying. There was even an Indian scholar who, upon reading Meister Eckhart, he would say, "I get the feeling that Meister Eckhart was just translating whole sentences and even paragraphs from the Upanishads or from the ancient Sanskrit texts, sacred texts, because he would be so similar in what he would say to, for example, what Hindu mystics say, to what Ramakrishna says, to what Adi Shankaracharya says, for example. The way he would speak about the soul mirrors so closely the way the Atman, the Supreme Absolute Self, is described in the Hindu tradition and in the Eastern tradition in general, that you would think that Meister Eckhart just studied in the East. Yeah, he went to India, he did the Indian trip that now everybody does, as a hip thing to do now, and then came back and adapted all the teachings to his Christian religion. But he didn't do that. Instead, he would do what every good mystic does. He would just have this direct contact with the Absolute. And from that supreme universal source, he would take these drops of truth and express them in the particular language of the time, of the culture he lived in, which happened to be medieval Europe. And he would just impact a lot of people through this. So I want to give you now a few examples of the things he would say in his sermons, just to get a taste of how beautiful these things are. So he would say that every creature is endowed with being by God and has nothing in separation from God. Nothing. Yeah, so if God is not there, the being is not there. And he would say that the deepest part of our being, the deepest part of ourselves, is just being. Simply being. Not being something, but being. Yeah, already this sounds very familiar to you, because through the Eastern thought and through the Eastern philosophy and the esoteric thinking of the Eastern doctrines, this is now a reality that we've heard many times. Yeah, it's a very commonplace even in New Age. So just be. He would say that 800 years ago. And he would say, if you just be, you would just discover God. Simply because God is just being. It's not something else that we put there on top. It's just being. He would say that we can come into contact with God by reaching into the deepest point of the soul. He would use such beautiful language to describe this deeper dimension of the soul, of the heart. He would call it the spark, the divine spark, the place within us, the dimension of ourself, which is out of time and space, which is out of any influence, out of any alteration, just purely eternal and unborn. And he would say, and I quote, "There is no need to look for God here or there. He is no farther away than the door of your own heart. There he stands waiting till he finds you ready to open the door and let him enter. No need for you to call him from afar. He is waiting more impatiently than you for that door to be open. He wants you 1,000 times more urgently than you want him. There is only one thing you must do. Open the door and enter. No one has ever longed so much for anything. No one has ever longed so much for anything as God longs to bring man to him. God is so close to us but it is us who are distant from Him and turned away from Him. God is within, but we are without. God is at home with us, but we are strangers to ourselves. So it is in this point that we discover God within, just by opening the door to our heart and meeting Him there in the depth of our being, not in our mind. He would ask people, invite people to drop the image that they have about God and instead just dare to take a leap of faith into the unknown through their intuition and just start perceiving God and to just let go of anything that they think God is and to just discover their beingness and in that beingness discover God, or to discover love and in that love discover God. He would say that we reach the being when we reach this point within ourselves, this deep point within ourselves, we would reach the being, and this being is not something that we create. We have not created our being. We have not created our beingness. But God has created this beingness. So he says that in this manner, the Son is born in every soul. And the Son here, of course, is meant to be understood in the same way in which Jesus spoke of the Son. The Son of God. Yeah, the creation of God. And as Eckhart dared to say, yes, the Son of God is what is a potential, or is as a potential within all of us. It wasn't that Jesus only was the only Son of God. We are all the sons of God and the daughters of God. But this is just a potentiality for us. He would say, God gives birth to the Son, as you, as me, as each one of us, as many beings, as many gods in God. In my soul, God not only gives birth to me as His Son, He gives birth to me as Himself, and Himself as me. So, God gives birth to me as Himself, and He gives birth to Himself as me, which is a massive mystical realization. Yeah? The fact that, yes, we are nothing else but this creation, this birth-giving of God, which is giving birth to Himself in this form, in the form of the soul, in the form of the Atman, the Supreme Self. And he would go on to say, I find in this divine birth that God and I are the same. I am what I was and what I shall always remain now and forever. I am transported above the highest angels. I neither decrease nor increase, for in this birth I have become the motionless cause of all that moves. I have won back what has always been mine. Here, in my own soul, the greatest of all miracles has taken place. God has returned to God. It takes a real merging with the Supreme Absolute, with God, to be able to say such things, especially in the context of the day, especially in the culture that he lived. Yeah, and you can see, in this way you can see the depth of his experience, which he wouldn't boast about. He would just tell other people how to get to God, how to feel God, how to know God directly. He would say that in order for the soul to be born of God and into God, it must set itself apart from the concerns of the material world. And I quote, I will never ask God to give Himself to me. All I ask is that He makes me pure and empty. For it is God's very nature to give Himself to those who are pure and to feel those who are empty. Nothing is so near to the beings, so intimate to them, as being itself. But being itself is being God. He would get so close to the Eastern teachings in so many points that is really astonishing. If you'd read his sermons, in many places he would speak about how people should act into the world. And surprisingly, given the fact he was a very committed religious person with a very high degree of religious discipline, he would say that the active path of life, remaining in life, doing what you do in life, will not cancel the possibility for you to find God, will not separate you from God. You don't have to give up on life, to renounce life. You don't have to give up your family and go into the convent or go into the monastery. All you have to do is to change your inner attitude, to change the things you're doing. And he would speak a lot about doing things from a place of inner detachment, doing them not for ourselves, not for any personal reward or gain, but simply for God. He would be completely overlapping in some of the things he would say to the teachings that you would find, for example, in the Bhagavad Gita about karma yoga, in which Krishna says the same. Stop doing things for your own sake and offer all the fruits of your actions to me, and that will make you divine. And Eckhart will say the same, and it would be from his own experience. His sermons are not very easy to read because the language, on the one hand, is addressing ordinary medieval people, and on the other hand, is to a certain extent, if you're not a Christian or a Catholic Christian, can feel a bit too heavy with the Catholic principles, with different quotes from different spiritual masters, from different saints and so on. But nevertheless, they have such an elevated resonance. You would read and read, and you wouldn't know how, but you'd get transformed by that.
Hey guys, if you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content on spirituality, Tantra and more.
And if you want to sign up for our online classes or for our retreats, you can see our website on the description below.